Hey, this is Craig. We're back again. What I've got here is the Husqvarna 576 XP Autotune, the eBay purchase. What I've done so far is just cleaned almost everything up, and I've got the bearings installed, both sides. This is going to be a complete OE build, so all the parts that I've got for this saw is going to be Husqvarna parts. I've done a video that showed the unboxing of them parts there. I know it's been a while ago, but today's December the 15th. It's a Saturday, or a Sunday rather. It's probably about 38 to 40 degrees outside. It's actually pretty chilly. It rained all day yesterday. It was just a nasty day. Now the wind's kind of blowing out of the northeast a little bit. It's got it kind of chilly. But anyway, I've cleaned everything up. I've cleaned up my gasket surfaces. I cleaned up the pockets where the bearings go in, both sides. So now we're ready to pull the crank. The crank is cleaned with these 576s and this series of saws. They actually come with crank stuffers to take up some of the crankcase area. Do not forget to put these on before you pull the cranks into the cases. Otherwise you're going to be pulling the cranks back out and you're going to be doing it all over again. Does not matter which side. These are not side specific. They just set on. There's a little indent, or not an indent, but a little raised land on the crank on either side. Goes right up into the opening there on the crank stuffer. I'm only going to put one side on at a time as I pull the cranks into the case halves. Start with the PTO side. Get it up in there like so. And just kind of make sure that crank stuffer doesn't fall off the crank as you're pulling it. What I've got here is a set of crank pulling tools from Matty O. This is from Matthew Olson on Matty O's YouTube page. What I come to find out, this was the main kit right here with some other pieces over here in my box. And then I acquired the sleeve and the rod to do the MS-880s. The rod is the same big end. It fits the Husqvarna 570, 575, 576 series of saws. Right offhand, I can't remember what size thread it is. I'm thinking it's, don't quote me, but I'm thinking it's 14125 or 1410. I'm not sure, but Matt talks about it in one of his videos. This is the 880 sleeve. It will not work with the Husqvarna style cases, and I'll try to show this to you. The bearings on these are proprietary. On the PTO side, it's got the seal actually inside of the bearing itself. And this, no matter which end you put it on, when you put it down, it wants to set out onto the seal surface a little bit. I could probably use this and probably be okay. Just use this in reverse of what it should be used. I think there'd be enough room there for the holding bolt, handle bolt to hold and move up. But I'm not going to chance it. So what I'm going to do is use the big sleeve out of the main kit, and that will actually, a little bit of dirt in there, that'll actually seat right down on the inner race of that bearing. And so you can see a gap all the way around there. So that this piece here, this smaller end of the sleeve, actually sits right down onto the inner race. And we've got enough threads here on the end that I can grab it with the net. Won't be able to use the washer, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. Put the washer off to the side. Turn the nut on here. Thread the holding handle in. And again, make sure that your crank stuffer is in the correct position. Turn that around like so. Wrench, ratchet with a socket, ratcheting wrench. I'm just going to use a crescent wrench. Pull this up tight. See, I'm actually pulling this through right now with my hand. Now it's starting to get a little tight. Again, make sure your crank stuffer stays in place. I'm going to have to resort to the crescent wrench. And I'm not putting no pressure on this at all, and this is pulling right on through. I mean, if I had to guess a foot poundage on this, I'm going to make sure the crank stuffer's in place. Yep, we're good. Well, we was until I bumped it. Okay, we're good all the way around now. If I had to guess a foot poundage on how much force I'm putting on this, I'd say probably somewhere around 10, maybe 15 foot-pounds of torque. It's very, very little. And it just makes pulling these cranks so much easier. And again, I'm going to check my crank stuffer here just to make sure what we're looking for. I'll try to show you here. See how it sets right down? We're right down on the throw of the crank. Sorry about that. Right there where it needs to be. This installation tool, I don't know why somebody didn't think about this earlier. It just makes things so much easier. And you just go around until, okay, right there, it's done. It won't go no farther. It's tight. So now at this point, just back it off a little bit. And see, we've still got plenty of room for this through bolt to slide, so it wasn't bound up there. That crank is all the way through that bearing and seated properly now. So, little tip for you there, Matt. The 880 rod will work on the 570, 575, 576 series of saws with the large sleeve from the main kit. Right there, nice and smooth. We're pulled all the way up. So now it's time to do the mag side, the flywheel side. But I'm going to pause this for a minute because I've got to find my pins and I've got to get the gasket, and then I'll start it back up. So give me just a second here. Okay, we're back. Had to find my dowels. I got my gasket set out. So now what we're going to do, I will make sure, I know that's clean because I took some brake parts cleaner to it earlier, cleaned it all up. But we will do it again just to make sure. I'm going to use some 3-bond 1184 on the gasket surfaces just to help seal. All I'm doing here is, for those of you who don't know, I'm just making sure this is oil free. so that the 1184 can get a good bond. I'll do that to both halves right now. Okay. Now, as cold as it is out here today, I won't need to be in any particular big hurry because this will take a while to tack up. We're just going to go around and put a nice little skim coat on it, so to say. Doesn't need to be nothing too awful much. A little bit of this goes a long way. There's other products out there that can be used. Some people like red coat. There is a new Permatex material that's out. I can't remember the name of it, but it's supposed to be for this same purpose right here. This is what I've been using for a while, so I just stick with what I know works best, or works for me rather. This will be pretty much a stock build. I'm not doing any work to the cylinder. The only thing I'm going to do is a base gasket delete build. We will do a comparison number of the squish with the gasket and without the gasket, just for comparisons, but it will be a non-base gasket build when I'm done. I'll do both halves here. Like I said, I'm in no big hurry today. As cold as it is, it's going to take a while for this to tack up anyway. When I edit the video, I'll either cut some of this out or I will fast forward. I hope this video turns out. I bought me a new camera. I'm actually using a Sony Handycam right now. Don't know how it's going to turn out. Hopefully it turns out good. I've shot a couple little videos just taking it outside and playing them back on the TV. Seems to have really good picture quality. A program that we have at work. If you do good deeds, you get what they call RPMs. Don't ask me what RPM stands for. I have no idea. But they actually purchased this camera for me, them RPMs did. So my place of employment actually bought this camera for me, in essence. Purchased it off of Amazon, caught it on sale. I believe it was like $235 for a complete package. That included a tripod and a light, 64 gigabyte card. I can't remember what will come with it, but I got a complete package deal for like $235. Okay. That's all that. I'll try to show you here. See how it's gray? That's all I'm trying to accomplish, is just the mating surface for the gaskets where the two case halves go together. A lot of this, people's probably saying, why are you telling us that? But I know there's probably a few people out there that is either new to this or don't really understand. Maybe they've just started. And that's really what this channel's been since the beginning, is to try to give information to somebody who may not know. Maybe they're not quite sure. And again, this is how I do it. This is probably not the proper Husqvarna way, but this is my way. So now, take the pins, or the little locating pins or dowels, set them in place, and remember, there is two different ones. I should have showed you that before I set it. One has a through hole. They both got through holes. Some of them are solid and some of them aren't. Both of these have through holes in them, so it doesn't really matter where these go. This one has a through hole because a case bolt goes there. The other one goes back here, and it's just a blind hole. There's nothing there. So if you have one with a through hole and one that's solid, make sure you put them in the correct location, or otherwise you're going to be splitting your cases to reposition them. Like I said, they're both the same, so it doesn't really matter where they go. Set your gasket in place. And you always want to use a gasket between your case halves. I know there's some people on YouTube that build these saws, and they'll just use the 1184 or some kind of a gasket making material and pull them together. And the problem with that is the tolerances on these saws are so tight that without the thickness of that gasket separating the two case halves, you could possibly pull them case halves too close or too tight and cause premature bearing failure, or even a crank issue, maybe a crank failure. Okay, don't forget your other crank stuffer. And the reason I stress that is because I built a 575, and this is the one that I forgot to put on. Pulled them together only to realize, crap, I didn't put that stuffer in there. So I had to pull it back apart, clean everything up, only to put this stuffer in. Okay, we're in place. Let me take this oil cap out of here. That retainer is going to flop around, and I know it's going to get in the way. I know it looked like I was holding it, but I wasn't. I was into it like this right here. Wasn't actually touching none of the 3-bond. So now we're ready to set the mag side or the flywheel side on. And again, This is the crank pulling tool from Matthew Wilson, or sorry Matt. Crap, done forgot your last name, Matt. Sorry about that. I will actually put in subtitles in the credits where this can be purchased. Again, make sure you got the correct one. That's setting right on the inner race of that bearing, right where you want it to be. This time I will use the washer. That way I'm not right on the sleeve itself. You don't have to use that washer. I prefer to if I can. Okay. This nut's a little smaller. Got to readjust my wrench here. So here we go. You're gonna kind of watch your case halves as they go together. Make sure that your locating pins go into the opposing slot, hole, whatever you want to call it. Did you hear that snap? So now we can go. Make sure the gasket's still in place all the way around. Looks like we're good. Go ahead and pull it on home. There we are, we're tight. Now, I've thought about this. I think I'm going to prefer to leave this in place as I put the case screws in. That way we keep the pressure on everything. Not that it really matters. I don't think it would actually matter. See how easy that turns? And that's still got pressure on this side here. But if you release the pressure on this, these case halves might open up just a smidgen. And I'm trying to prevent the 3-bond from pulling and maybe getting little strings. And then when you pull it back together, you might have a little leaker. I don't think that's going to be the case, but you know, anything's possible. This particular series of saws only has 5 case bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Excuse me, it's got 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 down in there. And 6 right there. Just a little bit of thread locker. I'm not putting a whole lot of thread locker on this. I'm just putting a little bead on one side of the threads. I'm not sealing them, just trying to lock them. Here's number 5 down in there. Number 6 out here. And that's another reason I like to use 3-bond on this series of saws is because it only has 6 case bolts instead of 7. Now all I'm going to do here is just kind of snug them. I'm not going to torque them or nothing. Just run them down. Going to do it a cross pattern. I've got my clutch set on number 3, just in case if I do go too far, it'll slip. Now I'll go back with my T-handle here, and I'll start snugging these down. Okay, now I've got them good and snug. Now I can go back and take this installation tool off. I repurposed my box there that come with my lathe tools in it. Now this is kind of interesting. Whoa. Okay. This is not good. This is just a wooden hammer. Doesn't look like it flared the end. Kind of looks like up inside, like it might have been just a little small for the diameter of the crank. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. The inside diameter of this is probably just a thousandth or 2 smaller than what the diameter of the crank there is. So, I hope I didn't score that seal surface. Doesn't feel like it. What I got is just a 90-degree pick. I'm putting the point right down on the crank, and I feel nothing grabbing. So I think we might have lucked out there. Okay, we're back. Going to check the squish. I got the OE cylinder installed, piston, no rings. I just got the cylinder bolts snugged down. I don't have them tight. I do have the gasket installed. So this first one will be squished with the gasket. And I'll do both sides here. And there we go. Battery actually went dead, so I had to charge the camera back up. Luckily it went dead just as I was finishing the last segment. After I had the issue with the sleeve getting it off, it went dead just after I was done getting it off. So we'll get out the good caliper here. The other one, the batteries are dead. See if I can't get this so you guys can see it here. Showing about 43 thousandths on the flywheel side. And about 40 thousandths on the PTO side. And there's what it measures before it's squished, about 62 and a quarter thousandths. So we'll buzz this cylinder off here real fast. I should have remembered that. That's not long enough to get clear down in there. I had it snug. I mean, it wasn't tight, but it was snug. So it should be representative of what it would be. You know, it might drop down to 42 on one side and maybe 39. Of course, that could just be where I had one side up against the wall a little tighter than I did the other. Gasket stuck to the bottom, held on to the screws. Okay, so now we'll do a no base gasket. See what we get with a no base gasket. This is actually how I'm going to be building this all anyway. Put this other tap in here. Get my long needle nose out. That way I can get back in there. Snug. tell that's considerably more or less, depending on how you want to look at it. It's got more squish, or it's going to be less thickness. Okay, we'll do the flywheel side first. About 24 thousandths on the flywheel side. This is the PTO side. Right at about 25 thousandths on the PTO side. So we want roughly from 40 thousandths, 41 thousandths down to roughly 25 thousandths. So we dropped 15 thousandths just by taking the gasket out of it. Yeah, that will change the port timing and duration. Well, it won't change the duration amount, but it will change the port timings a little bit. I'm really not worried about that. From what I've been able to ascertain, dropping the base gasket, dropping them down and increasing the compression on these saws actually wakes them up a little bit. So the 575 build that I've done, I used the base gasket and it's strong. So I'm really kind of interested to see how strong this saw is going to be. Okay, I'll pause this. I'll come back and I'll show you little snippets as I take it along. Okay, we're back again. Getting ready to set the cylinder. So first off, clean some of the oil off of my finger here, because I don't want to get any oil in that 3-bond. I've already taken and used brake clean on the mating surface, on the crankcase, and also on the cylinder, base of the cylinder jug. Just clean my finger off. So now we're going ahead and fix up the crankcases here and get this 3-bond on it. I'm going to be a little more liberal with the 3-bond here on the cases and on the cylinder, since I'm not using a gasket. I mean, I'm not slathering it on by any means. Still just a thin skim coat, but it is going to be just a little bit more than what it was on the gaskets. What I'm looking for here is when I pull the cylinder down onto the crankcase, I want to have enough that I have a little bit of squish out, but not so much that it just gobs out. Then what I'll do is, once I get the cylinder pulled down, get it torqued, I'll let it set for 24 hours. I'll come back and I'll do a pressure vac test on it to make sure we've got a good seal. That looks good there. Now with the cylinder, you've got to be a little more careful with it because you got a couple passages there, especially this one here is used for the pulse line to run the carburetor. This one here comes up into the manifold. I'm not even sure what it's used for. I think it might have something to do with the strato part of it, but this one here is the pulse. So you got to make sure them two holes there stay open. If you get some in the bolt holes, just poke it out. Okay. Looks good to me. Looks like it's got good coverage. Looks like I got enough thickness on there. Take my straight pick. I'll just go down in these holes here just to make sure, even though I can see they're open. I've already got the bearing in there. One thing here. Put just a little bit of oil on that bearing. Not a whole lot. There we go. Pins in. And I want you to see what I've done. Ring gaps, muffler end, arrow toward the carburetor. So let's do this again. Always make sure you put the piston on properly. Arrow toward the muffler, muffler's down here, the pins, always toward the carburetor. There we go. They actually sent me 2 brand new circlips in a package, and there was 1 circlip already installed in the piston. So I've only got to put 1 circlip in. I'm not going to cut these down, being these are OE circlips straight from Husqvarna. I'm not going to cut them at all. Put them in just as they come, because I'm sure that's how they would have been installed from Husqvarna. Okay, looks like we're home. Get just a little extra light down in there so I can see. Yep, we're home there. I'll check the one that was pre-installed. Yep, we're home there too. Okay, gonna pause this just a second. I'll be right back. Had to find my ring compressor. I forgot it. So now what I'll do, lightly oil up the cylinder walls here just a little bit. Not a whole lot. Take and put just a little bit on the rings here, down on the skirt of the piston. Okay, that's good. Ring compressor. Get the end gaps where they belong. Leave just a little bit off the top there. It's down just a fuzz from the top of the piston. That way when I go to set the cylinder, it slips down over the piston just a little bit before I start it. piston's in the cylinder now. Check my 3 bond, looks good. Okay. 1, 2, 3. This is the one where you kind of got it coming from the side here. 4. There's one started. That one started. That one started. And that one missed the hole. There we go. There, that one started. Now what I like to do is I like to run the piston up and down a couple times. If there's any variances in any of the machining tolerances, I think it centers the cylinder, and then what I'll do is bring the piston to the top. It doesn't have to be precise, but get it up to TDC. Then go ahead and snug the bolts down. Right now what I'm doing is just putting, I don't know, 15-20 foot-pound of torque on them. It's not a whole lot. And then what I'm going to do is run the cylinder over again just to make sure. Several revolutions, it's not hitting, don't have a piston slapper. Okay. So now I'll go through. I really don't like this one. This T-handle has got too much give to it. But it's the only one that I've got that's actually long enough to get in there. So I got another one here. I don't think, matter of fact, I know it's not. Nah, it's not long enough. One, two, 3, 4. Okay, now just for giggles, let's see what kind of a squish we're ending up with now. The rings are in there, so everything should be where it needs to be. This will be final squish. And I'll put my calipers back up. So real fast. This is the flywheel side, about 25 thousandths. This is the PTO side. About 26 thousandths. That's it. Yeah, about 26 thousandths. So we're within a thou side to side on squish. I think that's pretty good. So I'm just going to call it 25 thousandths on the squish. Okay. Now I may do a little more. I may put the chain braking stuff in. I'm not going to bore everybody with that. But I'll let it set just like it is until tomorrow. I'll come down and I'll put the new intake boot on it and I'll block everything off and we'll do a pressure vac test on it. See if it's holding up. Okay. Until next time. See you later.